Hello, English 141. It's Dr. Floyd, and we're talking a little bit about these summaries that you're writing. So you probably read the directions for the assignment by now. What you're turning in on Sunday is your draft, and then next week you'll turn in a cleaned up, better version of it. But here are just some tips on things that you're doing. So you found a good scholarly article, you've read it, maybe you've highlighted, annotated, pulled some good quotes out of it. You feel pretty confident that you know what these authors were saying in this article, and now you're ready to write this up. In general, what I have right here is what the blend of what all will be in your summary document. 2 to 3 pages where you are blending these really broad summary statements saying that this piece does this, paraphrasing some specific things the authors do, and then occasionally quoting them because they say they sum it up so well, or they use statistics, or they do something that you feel like you can't paraphrase so effectively, so you're going to quote. Okay, so that's the whole document. I'm just going to break it down a little bit. In your introduction, in that paragraph, you want to be really clear about naming the authors, if there are multiple, and the title of the piece. So you're going to say, in Michael Smith's article, the importance of using multiple techniques when dealing with people from other cultures, so whatever the title is. So you're going to name it. And then for the rest of the document, you're going to refer to the author by his or her last name. Okay, don't refer to them by their first name. That's inappropriately informal. You don't need to say the whole name every time, but you want to say the last name. So Smith. And then APA has this really weird obsession with dates. So kind of whenever you refer to this author, you want to put the year of publication behind it. So Smith 2018 says, Smith argues that, and it looks kind of unnatural until you get used to doing that. But again, it's just the APA way. Dates matter in social sciences and the hard sciences, but so how new or old or relevant or steeped in a certain moment in time and a thing is matter. So when you say the last name, then you say the date right behind it. Okay, and that's whether you're quoting or not. That's just when you're referencing that author. Okay, in this introduction, you want to try to say in a sentence or two what the article's about and what its overall argument is. Probably something that got published as a scholarly article is arguing something, or is a study that started with a research question and then did a study and came to conclusions. So you want to try to capture whatever that is in your introduction. Then in the body of the paper, you're summarizing the author's key points or the nature of the study. How did he or she go about finding the answer, proving their point, whatever the case may be. So you want to name, the 3, 4, however many main things that the author does. Sometimes you'll be paraphrasing that, okay? And paraphrasing means you kind of zero into a certain section of the piece. So if you're paraphrasing a study, and in one section, the authors describe how they set up the study. They had a control group and another group. They used surveys, questionnaires, and blind polling. And you're just kind of putting it in your own words. Paraphrase means that you can say it in your own words. You've read it 2 or 3 times, you've looked away from it, and you can kind of put it in your own words. But now when you can't do that, you find yourself, no matter what you do, you're still repeating the author's words 3 or more in a row, then that's when you want to make sure you use the quotation marks. And we're going to talk about quoting here in just a second. Okay, so that's basically what the summary is. You're not giving your opinion of the argument. You're not, in this case, talking about how you're going to use it in your paper. There are assignments that do that, like annotated bibliographies, but this is just, in a couple pages, can you tell your reader what this more lengthy scholarly article did, accomplished, studied, said. Okay, so I want to get to the quoting part because this is a really specific skill that you need for college writing for sure. When you use a quote, you don't want to just drop it in. Some people call those orphaned quotes, loose quotes, hanging quotes. They're just there. They just fell in a paragraph in between two sentences. You want to introduce, and we're just going to talk about 3 easy ways to do that. You probably already know them. You might not have thought about them in a while, but 3 ways to quote. And then in APA, when you quote, there are 3 components that you have to give somewhere in that sentence. So this is an article from an article by David Myers. It's on page 15, and it was an article about money and happiness. And Myers writes, although most realize that the seemingly happy lifestyle of the rich and famous is beyond their reach, they do imagine the good life that might become possible when they achieve greater wealth. So that's the exact quote. The easiest way to introduce with a quote that you learned in grade school was with an attributive tag. Who said it? Myers says. And there's that date that APA likes. So Myers says, and there's the whole quote in quotation marks. And then look at this. Your citation opens at the end. Now, an APA citation needs to include 3 elements: the author's last name, the year, and the page number. In this case, the name and the year came at the beginning of the sentence, so the only thing left to include was the page number. But if you didn't have that info up front, like this one, the author claims that, there's the whole quote, then you need all 3 elements in your parentheses. Author's last name, comma, year, comma, P period 15, and then the period goes outside the citation, not over here. So these are little things, but they're big deals and just getting your formatting right. Now, if you don't always want to be saying Myers says, Myers says, Myers says, you can use a sentence to kind of set up the quote. Myers, 2014, explains how people fantasize about money. And then after a full sentence, you use a colon. Then here is the quote where this is happening. And again, just the page number. The most sophisticated way to quote is where you're just kind of writing along your own sentence, and then you cut in the parts of the quote that, getting the wording just like the author did seems to matter. So Myers 2014 notes that while most people don't ever expect to live the, quote, lifestyle of the rich and famous, end quote, they do fantasize about, quote, the good life they could have with more money. Same 3 elements: author's name, year, and page number are there. So I'm going to put this somewhere in Moodle, this little handout on 3 ways to introduce quotes. But remember, the key is you're going to quote a few times in your summary. Make sure you introduce it and make sure you cite with these 3 elements.